Center for Innovation and Technology is offering you a golden opportunity to speak directly to your market at an affordable price. We also offer media training workshops, live streaming, documentary production, and events management. Get in touch with us today on the following numbers: +263 867 711 0290 or 0718 100 235. Don't forget to subscribe to our social media platforms. Like our Facebook page, Center for Innovation and Technology. Follow us on Twitter @SiteZW. And you can also check out our website, www.site.org.zw.
As Zimbabweans, we are tired of hearing what you say about each other. And we are waiting for somebody who is like a breath of fresh air, who can come here and tell us good ideas of what could be done. Part of the problem is Zimbabwe is lacking real leadership in a crisis, of somebody who can tell us what it is that needs to be done in order for us to move forward.
I think if we are going to find common ground as political parties and as Zimbabweans, we should learn to say the truth.
Yeah.
One of the issues that I've learned about conflict resolution is that the moment you know where the rain started hitting you, that's when you can come up with serious solutions to the problems that you're facing. So fundamentally, we have to look at what's the problem with our elections, what's the problem with electoral contestation in Zimbabwe. If we are going to move forward and find a common agenda for discussion, and I'm glad that political parties that are in parliament have started discussions on things that we thought and things that we believe we can find common ground on. And one of the ground rules that we've set for ourselves is to be as truthful as possible, to say the truth in a dignified manner and very factual. The problem with Zimbabweans that I have noted is that they've tended now to confuse hate language with truth-telling. There's a vast difference between saying the truth and scolding someone. I can say the truth, I can describe events factually without being disrespectful to anyone. And I think if we are going to move this country, if we are going to develop this country, we have to learn to be factual in a dignified way, respecting each other. If you have arguments, you can present them. I would like to start my presentation by acknowledging that one of the most contentious issues that we had as political parties has been solved, albeit partially, and we are glad that the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission managed to come up with a new voters' roll. And this is one issue that as political parties, as civil society, we have been advocating for. The 2018 elections were held under a new voter register. There were a lot of people who were skeptical about the ability of ZEC to come out with a new register, given the time that they were supposed to produce it and the resources that were available to them. But they pleasantly surprised us, and they came up with a new register, and I would like to applaud them for that. But my presentation is not going to focus on the processes that ZEC undertook to deliver the election. I would like to confront what we in NPF call the elephant in the room, and I believe as Zimbabweans we have to tackle that. We have to look at where the rain started hitting us in order for us to devise ways in which we can either have umbrellas, raincoats, or run away from the rain. And that is the military factor in our politics. This is a contentious issue, a very emotive one, but I would like to thank the 9th Parliament and the government of Zimbabwe because they've started tackling security sector reform. Albeit, if you talk to them, they become very repulsive about security sector reform, but meanwhile, they've reformed the ZRP. So at least something is happening. We hear that the ZRP is going to be changed from Zimbabwe Republic Police to Zimbabwe Police Services. And there are attendant changes that are going to happen with the change of name and maybe the change of the key result areas within that sector. And we believe that it is going to be for the good of the country. If we are going to agree that the election period started with the symbolic registration of the former President Mugabe, on the 14th of September 2017, where the then ZESN chairperson, as Derek pointed out, knelt before a supposed electoral contestant, then we have a lot to look at which went wrong in this election. And a lot of people, I've read reports that this election was the most peaceful. I don't know where those that say this election was peaceful are getting that from. Which electoral environment are they assessing? Because for me, this is 2 months before voter registration started. We had a coup in this country. We had a subversion of the constitution of this country and an ouster of a sitting president. And the coup came up with a lot of things. A lot of people died, and I'm not saying this from just the top of my head, but we had an interview with the former president where he indicated that he got reports that a lot of people died. A lot of people were beaten. There are medical affidavits to that effect. And this is during the electoral period. So if we are talking about a very peaceful election, we have to take that into consideration. Those people that died, those people that were beaten, are they not Zimbabweans? And we last saw a bomb blast during election campaign in 1980, when the country was coming from the war. But we had a bomb blast right close by here at White City Stadium. And a lot of people, 5 people died there. Very senior members of the current government got injured during the election campaign. The Vice President, Comrade Mohadi, got injured. The ZANU-PF National Secretary, Mai Mchinguri, got hurt. So this is what happened during the election. And this is to very senior people in the ruling party. Yet we are persuaded that this was the most peaceful election that Zimbabwe has ever had. I am not persuaded. I think we have had statements that are coming out from the presidential spokesperson. He confessed lately in the Herald on the 6th of February 2019 that the careers of Operation Restore Legacy, the euphemism that they use for coup, are all ZANU-PF cadres to the bone, who were largely motivated by the need to checkmate the alien G40 element in order to rescue the party at government. So the coup primarily was held to rescue ZANU-PF. And we are favored by minutes that were produced by George Charamba, Father Mkonori, and the then acting CIO General Ndebele. Those minutes, I can share them with anyone who wants them. They give us an outline on why the coup was held. And one of the fundamental reasons, and I will quote, why the coup was held was to ensure that ZANU-PF was not going, and I quote, that ZANU-PF faced another election without evidence of real economic recovery by way of completion of flagship projects or pointers to the general amelioration of the socio-economic conditions of an expected voting populace. And what did they then do? They thought to move in and take over the party. The army, the military, decided to move in and take over the party for the reason that they were afraid that ZANU-PF was going to lose the election and they were going to face the electoral crisis of 2008. And more broadly, they were going to fall to a similar fate suffered by Zambia, by UNIP in Zambia. So that was the motivation for the coup. Take over government, take over the state, take over ZANU-PF, go for elections. And this is the military that we're talking about. And the situation was not held, and I'm a journalist, I will just stick to facts, by statements that were coming from within the ruling party. And we were told by the then Deputy Minister of Finance, Terence Mukube, that the army won't let Chamisa rule. This was published by the Newsday. It's in the public domain. We were also told by my father, the former provincial minister for Mashingo, Josiah Ungwe, that Mnangagwa will shoot to stay in power. These are statements that are in the public domain. I know you are afraid to say these words, but we'll say them nonetheless. So this is the situation that we are facing. This is the situation that we want to find common ground. This is the situation that we want to discuss and rectify as political parties. How do we deal with the military factor in our politics? Do we legislate against it? Do we mobilize our supporters to go into the streets and topple the sitting government? Is it plausible? Is it a democratic way of solving the problem that we are facing? We believe that dialogue is the best. That's why we have availed ourselves to the initiative by the Zimbabwe Institute to discuss ways on how we can deal with this very emotive issue. And I believe once we do that, we can have a lot of women participating in politics in Zimbabwe, because the situation will be conducive for them to do that. Currently, you have a situation, if you are a woman, you are either beaten or you are raped or killed. But if it's a man like me, I'll just be beaten or have my days shortened here on earth. Those are just the two options that I have. But with women, there's also the most brutalizing effect of rape. So we have to talk about that. We have to talk about how, as a nation, we can move forward. And I think we can reform the security sector. Let me leave that and talk about a bit about administrative issues that we observed as a political party pertaining to the voter registration. I say that the voter registration pleasantly surprised us because generally it went out very well. A lot of people registered, our supporters registered to vote, but we encountered something on election day which was called an exclusion list. We don't know where this was coming from. We tried to search the Electoral Act and there's no provision for an exclusion list in the Electoral Act. And this exclusion list disenfranchised about 90,000 people. And our investigations revealed that this was as a result of some ID numbers being not being able to be read by ZEC MOD3. It's a modulus 3. It's an equipment that they use to verify ID numbers, and some of the ID numbers could not be read, resulting in the exclusion list, which disenfranchised about 90,000 people. And we believe that ZEC could have conducted those people in time and make sure that there was a way of trying to rectify the problems attendant with that. And also we had issues on results management, and this was mainly to do with how the presidential election results were announced. They collected the results from all constituencies in one particular province, then announced that as one, and that naturally led to some delays, and we saw what happened, people being agitated and people beginning to suspect that there was something going on with the results. That's why we had a demonstration on the 1st of August. So we believe as a party that election results, the presidential election results can be announced at constituency level, and maybe that would expedite the speed in which those can be announced, so that we don't have what happened on the 1st of August 2018. Then we also had an issue with the electoral justice system, where it took the Chief Justice until after the election to declare the amount that was needed for a candidate to pay for them to challenge the electoral outcome. We thought this could be gazetted before the election, so that the candidate would know that if I go into an election and I have a challenge, I would know exactly how much I'm supposed to pay. Candidates were made to pay $50 to contest, but interestingly, you had to fork out $2,000 to challenge the electoral outcome. I don't know the wisdom about this. And also, there is also a provision within the electoral law that we thought could be changed. We are going to discuss with our colleagues that maybe we can also look at ways where the Electoral Act could be changed in order to allow voters to challenge an election outcome. Because as it stands now, it's only a candidate who can challenge that. As a journalist, I think I cannot sit down without saying anything about the media. And the media was also one of the first victims of the coup that I talked about, where the then Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces urged journalists to report responsibly. And reporting responsibly, I know what it means, exactly what it means, especially in a war situation like that we faced from the 15th of November under the current regime. So journalists were even scared just to write the word coup. And I was also even surprised by Mr. Mwanyisa yesterday. He couldn't even correctly say that what happened in Zimbabwe was a coup. So that kind of fear is what we have to confront. And we have to confront it by accepting that the situation is not normal. Because if you are afraid to describe events in your country, then it should tell you that something is wrong. If you are not convinced that something is wrong, then something will be definitely wrong with you. So the media is one of the issues that are supposed to be free to give information on the election, describe processes, give information to the voters. And I think it wasn't the case in this election. And despite the fact that we have Section 160 in the Electoral Act, which provides for equal access to the media, and also that ZEC formed a committee to monitor the media. But we haven't heard anything about any report from that committee. And I think we can do better in that area. So as a way of concluding, I think Ramotsi wants me to conclude. I want to end by saying that we don't raise these issues that we are raising because we want to be cynical or we want to embark on sustained demonization of our country and our electoral processes. We do so because we believe we can be better and move towards a common agenda if we tackle our problems after correctly identifying them. As a party, we have always said the elephant in the room, as far as our elections and governance are concerned, is the military factor in our politics. Until we gather courage to tell it as it plays out, we can gather here and waste resources without doing anything to change our electoral politics. Those who are here, that are in Parliament, I know we are represented in the 9th Parliament, but with just one member, we have a duty to raise these issues and, where possible, enact laws to deter a repeat of these things in upcoming electoral contests. We can also mobilize ourselves politically to challenge the use of the army by one political party in elections. I also believe those in the civil society, in diplomatic missions, in bodies such as the AU, SADC, and the UN, you have a job to help us move out of the ban of military rule that we are reeling under. I know many might not be comfortable with my message today. I understand your fear, but may that fear lead you to the realization that the palpitations and discomfort you are experiencing now are evidence something is wrong somewhere. I would like to leave you with this profound saying by William Shakespeare from his play Julius Caesar, which I believe might soothe your fear. Shakespeare says, "It seems to me strange that men should fear, seeing that death, a necessary end, will always come." Again, let me remind you of profound words by the same author, that a coward dies 1,000 times before his death, but the valiant test death but once. Fellow Zimbabweans, it is better to die once than go through the pain of death several times before your inevitable demise.
I was saying to my brother Mawarire, jealous. I said, jealous, you are the NPF spokesperson, but you also happen to be the spokesperson for the former president who belongs to ZANU-PF. How do you manage that?
George Charanda is still president than his spokesperson.
No, I I'm actually admiring the gift God gave you. But I equally say to him, I talk a lot about it when he's not there, because for us to have elections, he went to court. I'll start from there. We're not having elections for a long time. Jealous Mawarire went to court. I'm trying to bring to you, to your attention, the power of the Constitution, the power of knowing your rights. That's what I want to talk about, the power of knowing your rights. Jealous knew his rights, went and approached the courts when political parties themselves who want to be power could not even go to the courts. But he is an ordinary citizen going before the courts and said, we must have elections. And then elections happened. How many of us really understand the Constitution? Dr. Mosi, we meet all the time, and you see me making a lot of noise. But those who read the Constitution understand that I have freedom of speech as enshrined in the Constitution. But when you speak, you're asked, why are you speaking? But the Constitution gives you that right. Section 6 of the Constitution talks about 16 languages. And we are here meeting and saying that we must change this nation when the Constitution is only in one language. Why are we being unfair to the people? How many years has this Constitution been? And what have we done to ensure that it's in the 16 languages enunciated in the Constitution of Zimbabwe? The Tongas must also have their own, so that when we are talking to them, we are speaking from the same book. The Bible, if you are around Ndebele, you see it in Ndebele, you see it in Shona. But this sacred document is at all not in the 16 languages, but in one. And yet, the Constitution talks about all those languages. Even in Parliament at times, there is a member of Parliament who was debating in Tonga. Some could not hear what he was saying. There was no translator. So how do you debate? I just wanted to touch on your conscience and say, but why do we always meet and not comply with the Constitution? And then I go to constitutionalism. Does constitutionalism really exist? We talk about towards political parties common agenda for electoral reforms. But that's all to do with the Constitution. It's enshrined in there. If you go to section 213 of the Constitution, I want to read this out because I was in Davos and I went there on my own and I could see people struggling. By the way, I was on holiday, so I decided to go and ski. So I usually ski in that part of the world. For those who probably don't ski, but it's the right time to go and ski.
What skiing?
And the doctor said to me, what is skiing? It's when you've got the entire gear and you are moving through snow, ice, and it's white. Okay, that's skiing. But the most important thing that I would like to dispel at this point in time is section 213 of the Constitution talks about the deployment of defense forces. If you go to number 2, with the authority of the president, the defense forces may be deployed in Zimbabwe. With the authority of the president, the defense forces may be deployed in Zimbabwe. It also talks about him having the power to deploy outside. For what reasons? A, talks about in defense of Zimbabwe. B, talks about in support of the police service in the maintenance of public order. Or C, in support of the police services and other civilian authorities in the event of an emergency or disaster. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot keep on talking about the deployment of defense forces when the very same Constitution you are part to talks about that. Why are you not moving for the amendment of that? We talk so much without reading. Whose Constitution is it? You're all quiet. And the Constitution is very clear that the president, who has the power, can deploy the army that you talk about, let them stay in the barracks. They belong to the barracks. The Constitution does not say they belong in the barracks. The Constitution says the commander-in-chief, who's the president, can tell them to go into the streets. I'm responding to the issue of us constantly talking about the army interfering. They are not interfering. They are part of the constitution of this country. And I want anybody who has any other constitution of Zimbabwe that counters that to think proper that. Because we'll meet here and talk about something which is constitutional and bring it up. What for? May we have people lobby parliamentarians to amend the Constitution that the president must not have the power. If the president has the power, let's say Parliament must have the power because it represents the people to then say they must move in. That's for you. For as long as you don't amend it, I think let's not discuss that. I want to talk about the electoral reforms. In the last 8th Parliament, there were a few members who used to contribute to the electoral reforms. And you are also the ones who choose those members of Parliament. You. And I mean you. You're the one who puts an X for them to represent you in Parliament. What action was taken to ensure that the electoral reforms are amended according to the environment and to what you want? Honorable Jesima Njomi was vocal. Honorable Misai Rambo was vocal. Honorable Gonese was vocal. Of course, yours truly, always vocal. Any others? No. Are those members of parliament, some of them, are they there? Some are gone. We've just come from the election, and I thought that the political parties would be in the forefront of pushing that agenda. Not when we are going towards elections, but immediately after elections. Nothing is really before us from the civic society organizations that are here. I'm glad that ERC, before the end of the 8th Parliament, brought us together to say, how do we, amend this? Because as members of Parliament, we don't have the time, Dr. Mosi, to be researching. We are not there for research. If you think we're there for research, you're wasting your time. You give us the information that you want, and then we debate on the facts that you give us, then we are able to do that. The constitution of this country has no criteria in terms of the qualifications of a member of parliament, academic qualifications. It's only citizen, registered voter, over 21. It does not talk about O-level as an MP, A-level as a councillor or whatever. It does not talk about that. So the parliamentarians are reflective of you. Yet Zimbabwe is said to be a very educated country, but yet there is nothing in their constitution that talks about academic qualifications. Zambia, you cannot be a member of parliament if you don't have an O-level. But when does this start? Political parties. All these electoral reforms which are violated, there's a home. There's a home that they start. The culprits are the political parties. The violence is the political parties within. I'm talking to the political parties who are here. All of them. They have got their own people who they used to fight this one. When it comes to elections, they rig themselves. And when you come to the main election, you've got the master of rigging who deals with you. You cry foul, but you have started the rigging at your party. When the game doesn't suit you, you complain you've been rigged. But how did you yourself win the primary election in your party? Was the process proper? There is no process politically, internally in this country that has passed the test. That's why people end up being independent. They end up doing Boram Sango. Boram Sango is a manifestation of political parties, not of the general election of the country. Boram Sango what for? Because this one who was elected was not elected fairly, so I'm now not going to support them. So I'm talking about where the problem is. The political parties fall short of passing any test of democracy within them. And for us to then expect that we must honor the Constitution, yet where you are coming from, there's no respect of the Constitution. The coming in of Chamisa into power, there's a debate. The coming in of Emerson Mnangagwa into power, there's a debate. When somebody speaks the truth, you say amen. I think the bishops are, the bishops are here. We must be very clear and candid. They then go through the formal party processes. of them saying, okay, there's a Congress. If there's any one thing that ZANU is good at, it is good at ratifying the wrong things. The Central Committee, which is the principal organ of the party, by the way, it is not the Politburo which is powerful. The Politburo reports to the Central Committee, but the Central Committee does not know that it is the boss of the Politburo, unfortunately. So whatever the Politburo says, the Central Committee does not question. Yet the Central Committee can overturn. That is the reason why when the former president was out of power, the Central Committee had to meet to then appoint the current president to be the president of the party. Again, there's a standing rules committee in the MDC. When they speak, they've spoken. The former president, late Changra, a great Democrat, decided to appoint vice presidents. Was it constitutional? But the standing rules committee, whatever, standing orders committee met and ratified, and it was in order. So the minutes say that it was done properly. But from where we are going, is that what was supposed to happen? Could people not sit down and say, let's change the constitution to then bring in the necessary people that we want? I thought, Dr. Motsi, I'll talk to the real issues, the political parties, because we tend to run to the general elections, yet the elephant in the room are the political parties. And there's nobody better to lecture them than myself, because I beat all of them, and none of them went to court. None of them went to court, and I dare them to go to court with their V11s.
Got about 5 minutes.
I want to address the issue of the coup. The army was part of the process of ensuring there's a second republic. So were all of us, the people of Zimbabwe. That's the reason why I have a problem when ZANU-PF talks about bringing in Mnangagwa into power. They had kicked Mnangagwa out of power. Yes or no? Those were in ZANU-PF. 9 provinces had said Mnangagwa must go. And he went. And then there was the People's March, the People's Revolution, which was done by the war veterans and everybody involved. It is the first time that I saw members of parliament coming together. The issue of impeachment, for those who don't have the record, was first started by Honorable Maridadi then, and I was the second. And no one wanted to touch it, because it was, who would touch it? No one. Maridadi was pushing for it to impeach the president. When the army then failed to remove the former president, and I say this for the first time, they failed. He refused to go. There was then an impeachment process. I was called, since I was seconding the Maridadi, want to say, okay, can you step aside? And ZANU-PF will move the motion through Honorable Monica Mchangwa, seconded by Maridadi. Monica Mchangwa was ZANU-PF from the upper house, and Maridadi was from the lower house. The debate started. You all saw it. The president was still in power. The impeachment process was moving on. The debate started. Then came a letter. And I remember eye-to-eye contact with Nelson when he went to the stage to see what was in the letter. I went to him. I signaled this. Is this okay? He says, don't worry. It's okay. We are done. If you follow that whole thing, I started jumping and celebrating, and everybody celebrated. I want you to go through that, because we seem to lie every day, yet there's evidence. When the army wanted to move Mugabe, did he go? Yes or no? So let's be honest, why are we constantly lying to generations to come? That's why I get emotional, even in parliament, because I hate people who are not honest, especially at our age. The impeachment process, which is more dangerous than a coup, is the one that got Mugabe out of power. MDC celebrated, everybody celebrated. So to me, I want to remind, because I'm a legislator, I'm not here to please anyone. And credit goes to the Speaker of the National House of Assembly, who, for your own information, at 1:45, he had been telephoned by the then President that you're not moving on. And the then Minister of Justice, Bonyongwe, was also lobbying, saying you cannot go ahead. But the Speaker stood firm and said the process had already started. I cannot at all stop it. That's a man that you must give credit to as Zimbabweans, because he's stuck by the Constitution. I thought I would give you this information since you don't have it. And then that happened. I want to just finish off with a lot of the electoral, I call it electoral malpractice. When you talk about rigging, what is rigging? Explain it. Is it ballot stuffing? Is it violence? Is it vote buying? We need to be very specific, because each time we have now planted this despondent seed in the electorate that whatever you do, it's rigged. I have gone through 3 elections, and no other person in this country or party has gone through these elections. 2013, I stood for ZANU-PF in Urungo West. I was then expelled. I stood against ZANU-PF in Urungo West. And that election, I must tell you, is the only election which the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission report, which sadly political parties have not read, which talked about the electoral malpractices across the board and the recommendation. What saddens me is that no one has ever done anything about it. Then I took part in the Norton by-election, that's 4. This is a term, and then I took part in the 2018 election again. That's 5 elections in 1 term. So if you were to be asked, who is the best person to talk about elections? So to me, I've gone through these elections. You talk about rigging. You cannot rig an election. 2008, admittedly, the election was rigged. The results came out later. But in this election, you are supposed to have your own agent. In my next election, my chief election agent will be Dr. Motz. I'm allowed to choose. So, but you are given an opportunity to choose the people you trust to be at each polling station. The question I ask, how many candidates, how many political parties put those people in place? It's a question I ask. ZESN is here. ERC is here. In concluding, my secret to an election is to be thorough. I call them to educate my agents. And I take agents from the University of Zimbabwe who are either political scientists or lawyers across the board through the Youth Advocacy for Reform and Democracy, YAD. You've got to be doing a law degree, or you have to go to be doing political science, and those become my polling agents because academically they are sharp. They are not known in the area. They are able to argue. They are able to communicate on any phone and give you the information on what is happening. But they need to go thorough training so that they are able to safeguard your interests at the end of the day. So my whole take on a lot of things happening in terms of electoral practice is that, one, people don't have information. Even our own lawyers have failed to go to the courts. If you look at the Chegutu election, which clearly was won by MDC Alliance, but because they failed to push that through the courts, the victory. So our lawyers not conversant with the application of the petitions. That was an issue that we need to talk about. At times, it is the lawyers who seem not to understand the laws of the country in terms of the electoral process, how to challenge it, how it is done, and so forth.